Well, I'd like to, can everyone, Trevor and everyone on the panelists, can you see my screen okay and the slides?
Yes, we can, or at least we can.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So I'd like to just welcome everyone to the CABA Intelligent Buildings Council webinar. And we are recording this webinar for those that are unable to attend, and we'll be posting it on the IBC website shortly, along with the minutes from the meeting and the PowerPoint slides, and in the archive section where all the other webinar informations are. And we're going to forego the formal roll call just because of the number of people that register for this particular webinar. And without further ado, I'll pass it off to the chair of the Intelligent Buildings Council, Trevor Nightingale, to lead the meeting. Trevor.
Thank you very much, Greg. Welcome everybody to the IBC meeting on the 8th day of May. So good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are. So I'd like to take an opportunity before we get into it to introduce the three co-chairs that or vice chairs that we have on the IBC, and maybe in the order in which they appear on the screen. So starting with Harsha, then Robert, and then Bob. Do you want to introduce yourself so they know your voice, and then I'll get on the administrative part of the meeting.
Thanks, Trevor. Harsha here from Honeywell. I lead the regulatory for the Pacific region. Thank you.
Bob Lane. No, looks like Bob was unable to make it. Bob Allan.
Sure, thanks, Trevor. Bob Allan with the Siemon Company. I manage our global business development effort for intelligent buildings.
Excellent, thank you very much. So we're actually growing quite well. And our numbers typically grow by about 5% per year, and our membership stands at over 300. So I think I may be a little repetitious for some, but I think would be very useful to provide a little bit of an overview of what we do. So the IBC works really to strengthen the large building automation industry through innovative technology research projects and activities. So as we'll see later today in the presentation, that includes white papers, and Ken will talk about those. Could include boutique R&D projects and landmark research projects, which you'll hear about more, and also the meetings such as this one here. These council projects promote the next generation of intelligent building technologies and incorporate a holistic view that optimizes building performance and cost benefits to the building owner and to the tenants of the building. So we're here really to identify how technology makes buildings more effective and more efficient. So onward to the administrative side of things, slide 3. The minutes of the meetings of the previous meeting on the 30th of January 2019 have been posted at the CABA website under the IBC subtab. I would like to make a motion for approval of these minutes. So I'm looking for somebody to make a motion for the minutes as written.
Bob Allan, I motion to accept.
Thank you very much, Bob. May I have a seconder for this motion?
Harsha, yeah, I accept.
Thank you, Harsha. Are there any opposed to the minutes of the meeting as written and posted on the IBC website? Hearing none, the motion passes and the minutes are approved. Thank you. So that takes care of the formalities for today's meeting, and now we really get into the interesting stuff. And at that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Bob, to introduce our keynote speaker.
Great. Thank you, Trevor. This is Bob Allan again with the Siemon Company. Today we have Sanjay Gupta with us, who is going to talk about wireless power-enabled dynamic digital displays in smart retail. Smart retail aims to replace the current paper or plastic product that detailed tabs with dynamic digital tabs. This would allow retailers to sync their on-shelf displays with their databases of products, name, price, discount, and stocking, enable real-time updates with less manual logistics. With thousands of displays per building, standard wired power becomes unrealistic at scale, and retailers are exploring the adoption of wireless power to enable these digital displays. Sanjay can help decide how much you want to talk about. Sorry about that. Here is Sanjay's bio. You can decide how much. Greg, you threw me for a loop here with this one. Dr. Gupta is an entrepreneurial technology executive experienced in bringing new technology to the market and creating global standards necessary for interoperability and market adoption. He's held leadership positions in the 3GPP, the Open Mobile Alliance, and other global standards organizations, in addition to his executive roles at a variety of leading technology companies. Most recently, Dr. Gupta headed product management and development for Wacks, where he played a key role in engineering and bringing to market the world's first AirFuel compliant wireless charging laptop, and at MC10, where he led the creation of epidermal electronics, i.e. electronics that are thin, stretchable, and flexible and have the same mechanical properties as that of human skin. With that, Sanjay, I will turn it over to you to take control and educate us on retail displays.
Well, thank you so much. I am glad to be here and talking to the CABA community. Okay, very good. So let's get, and
I granted you control the slides. If that doesn't work, I can do it for you.
Yeah, it seems to me, at least I'm having some challenges. Okay, perfect. So yeah, so let's get on with the next slide. And you can click one more so we can see all the data here. So yeah, before we get into the smart retail displays, I would like to take a few minutes and just talk about wireless power in general, right? And I would think most of us have experienced wireless power already. If you have an electric toothbrush, or you have one of our newer smartphones, which can charge wirelessly, you probably have experienced, at least the first generation of wireless power. And wireless power is already pretty big, right? We have had 500 million devices with wireless power shipped in consumer electronics last year. It's growing at 40% over the last year. So pretty significant growth rates. And if you look at what the top analysts are saying, we're talking about billions of devices in the next few years, right? And the scope of wireless power in general, right, is way beyond some of the consumer electronics where we get to see, right? Whether it's the AR, VR type products, wearables, automotive, and in automotive there are two kinds, right? You all heard about the electric vehicles, and unfortunately those batteries don't charge in 5 minutes, and nobody loves to plugging your cars in. We don't like plugging our phones in, and nobody certainly enjoys plugging your cars in. And how do you charge your car or your EV wirelessly? That's a pretty big market. Robotics, very interesting. IoT, we will talk a little bit about IoT, but the biggest challenge with IoT sensors today is they all need batteries, and these batteries need to get replaced. Healthcare is another exciting one. Healthcare, what I like to say is, outside the body in a provider, hospital or a clinic, but also powering electronics that are inside your body, whether it's a defibrillator, neurostimulator, all these kinds of electrical therapies are going mainstream, and what you can do is limited today by the desire to provide power to these devices, right? So the bottom line is, right, wireless power is more than just smartphones and toothbrushes and so on. In fact, I like to tell on a smartphone, it's a nice to have, really not a must have, right? We were all happy with charging our phones through a wire, which most of us still like to do. But for a lot of these other markets, wireless power is an absolute necessity, right? It's not just a nice to have, but if you don't have wireless power, the value proposition of those products really suffers. So can we go to the next slide, Craig? Okay. So I think it's important to understand when we talk about wireless power, what are folks expecting, right? And wireless power, actually, in this world where everything is going wireless, it's very easy to see the word wireless power and the images it kind of conjures up in people's minds. The first is, I like to say, it has to be fast. And this is something even the smartphone industry is learning is wireless power is good, but if wireless power is slower than wired power, we lose interest and you lose customers, right? Today, nobody says Wi-Fi is slow. We all like Wi-Fi. We've all dished our Ethernet cables because Wi-Fi is fast and there's really no difference as far as the experiences we get, whether it's wired or wireless, right? And same for wireless power. Consumers are not going to adopt the technology if it is going to be slow. What I mean by interoperability is not only the fact that you have interoperability from a standards perspective, but also all of your devices have to be able to charge from the same transmitter, right? Your phone, your laptop, your wearables, everything that you own that has a battery that needs to get charged should be able to power from the same transmitter. And this is really very different than what technology is available in the market, or what I like to call the first generation of technology, right? Which is you have a separate technology for smartphones. If you need to have laptops, it's a very different technology, and it's very much the amount of power that you're transmitting dependent. And what that means is it's like having electrical outlets on the walls where you say you can plug your phone into this one and you can plug in your TV into a different one. It just doesn't work, right? You want to have the same outlet on the wall, the same wireless power transmitter that can power everything. And unfortunately, most of the technology that is available today that people have experienced kind of falls short of that. Okay, Greg, can we go to the next slide? So really, the industry is going through a technology evolution. And what we have today is the first generation technology. And I grew up, doing cellular. And I like to say this is like what we have today is like the days of the analog cell phone, a technology that requires very precise placement. It's kind of wireless power only in name because the receiving antenna and the transmitting antenna almost have to be touching each other and perfectly aligned, right? And if they move, it doesn't charge, your devices heat up. And what really people want at the end is the fact that devices can charge in the normal course of the day. So that you get a lot of spatial freedom. You can charge multiple devices at the same time. And not only multiple devices, but multiple devices with their own very different energy requirements, right? So the technology that we have today is something that is called inductive, and there's a standard behind it called Qi, but I like to call it the WP 1.0, wireless power 1.0. What we are moving next, and this is really where AirFuel comes in, are two new technologies which are like moving to 3G. If you take the analogy with cellular. The first technology is called magnetic resonance. It works at a frequency which is about 20 times higher, but the biggest benefit that you get is threefold. One is you get spatial freedom. So you can imagine, you can enable charging surfaces rather than the point charging experience that you get today with the first generation technology. You can enable, let's say, your desk or a kitchen counter to be all charging enabled, right? So you can put devices on that surface and everything is charging. And these devices, you can charge multiple devices at the same time, whether it's a phone, a laptop, your smartwatch, your wearables, everything that is on the surface can charge. And it's important to remember all of these different devices have very different power requirements and how fast they can charge and so on. And the magnetic resonance standard can accommodate for all of this. Then there is also another technology, which we will talk a little bit more about today, which we call RF, which uses frequencies that go, you know, I like to call it almost a gigahertz and somewhere in that neighborhood. And what it lets that do is what I like to sometimes say is volumetric charging, right? So instead of creating surfaces that are charging enabled, now you can charge in 3D. And so you can have devices that are in your pocket or on your wrist or on the wall that can all charge without plugging in. Now you say, Sanjay, of course we love RF. We love the idea of 3D volumetric charging. What's the difference between magnetic resonance and RF? The challenge is not the technology, but some of the safety requirements, right? With magnetic resonance, there is really no limit to the amount of power that you can send wirelessly and safely to devices. When you're talking about RF, since the energy is going into a 3D volume or space, you have to be careful about human safety, and there are existing regulatory bodies and rules that you have to follow. And what that means is the amount of energy you can send is going to be limited, especially in the presence of live human beings and pets and so on. And we'll dive a little bit into it as we go along. Okay, Greg, can we go to the next slide? Okay, so a little bit about AirFuel Alliance before we get into some of the retail displays and RF. So AirFuel Alliance is an alliance formed by some of the innovative companies in the world who all have a very single objective in mind, which is allow consumers to power up all of their electronics without plugging in, right? So eliminate the last cord in our lives. Who loves to carry the power bricks and the gazillion cables that we all carry in our bag, right? And sometimes they're actually heavier than some of our electronics. And so specifically, there are two things that we do. We not only are writing the technical standards, but also help in the testing, interoperability testing. We host plug fests and also help with market adoption. Our membership is actually quite diverse. All aspects of the wireless power value chain are represented. We have a global membership of close to almost 100 members now, distributed globally between Europe, US, and Asia. And if you go to the next slide, Greg, you'll be able to see some of the brand names that are very familiar, I'm sure, to all of you, are actually represented and actively participating. But the very interesting part is it's not just the technology companies, but semiconductor companies, ODMs, test houses, folks that provide engineering support. All of them are active members of AirFuel Alliance and are collaborating to bring what is a generational change in wireless power, completely new set of experiences. Okay, Greg, can we get to the next slide? So let's talk about, smart, right? And before we get to retail, right, how you make things smart is by having these Internet of Things sensors, right? And if you look, these sensors are very important because without the data that is coming from these sensors, you really are limited in terms of what you can do in the cloud and what AI and algorithms and services you can provide, right? And these IoT devices have two key components to them. The first is actually they have to be able to sense something, and you can decide what is being sensed. The next is sensing is no good if you can't communicate the data to the cloud, right? So they need connectivity. Both sensing and connectivity, and then the IoT devices may have other characteristics, but at least sensing and connectivity are the two most basic things. Without it, you don't really have an IoT sensor. Unfortunately, both sensing and connectivity requires energy, right? So they all end up having batteries. And we'll talk about the challenge that this creates, because these IoT sensors, even though they are low power, they're not zero power. They all end up having batteries or having a need for power in one way, shape, or form. And that creates a challenge. Even the simple BLE beacons for location that you see, they all have batteries that eventually have to get replaced, maybe 6 months to a year. And good luck trying to find where those BLE location beacons are. And the cost of replacing those batteries, if you can find the beacons, is actually higher than the cost of the battery or the cost of the IoT sensor to begin with, right? And that poses a challenge. So Greg, if we can go to the next slide. Okay. So before let's park that discussion on the side. The other interesting development that has happened over the last year, and one of our AirFuel members has really innovated on displays. And these are displays that I'm assuming most of you have experienced already, are called e-ink or e-paper displays. These are displays which are very different than your traditional smartphone display or your TV display, in the sense that these displays do not need power if the image is static. So they need power to actually change what is on the display. But once the image is on the display, it can stay there for a long period of time without needing any energy, right? So we call them bistable displays. They don't have backlighting. They work by reflecting the ambient light, and that's how you see them. So they tend to be extremely low power consumption and so on. And this is why they are very attractive for IoT devices, right? In a lot of different applications, you need to have these IoT sensors and so on have displays. And since these devices tend to be lower power, e-ink displays tend to be the right fit. Some of the other benefits of the e-ink displays is, they are thin, flexible. Literally, you cannot break them. You literally need to cut them with a scissor to actually stop them from working. And they're flexible. They almost feel like paper. And if you've used a Kindle with the e-ink, you probably experienced the technology at least a little bit. Okay, so so e-ink displays are actually very attractive for IoT displays, given the fact that their power requirements are actually very, very small, and they only need it when you are changing the displays, when in a lot of environments you don't have to do that very often, especially in retail, right? If you're going to have the product information or pricing or a barcode displayed, you don't have to update them maybe once every minute or so. And for those applications, these displays are actually quite attractive. Greg, can we go to the next slide? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about these IoT devices and batteries, and why is there such a huge need to eliminate the batteries. The first is just, you want these IoT sensors to be there. You put them in place. They're not visible to anybody, but they can last a lifetime, right? So really prolonged product life. And today, what is really limiting is the fact that you have to go swap these batteries. And that is a huge, huge challenge. The second thing which people miss out is, you have these batteries, and these batteries are never environmentally friendly. They all end up in a landfill, and we all know what is inside these batteries. And that's a challenge. The other benefit, which I think folks miss sometimes, is you want these IoT sensors to be, we want all of our electronics to be thin and light and flexible and stretchable and all of that cool stuff. And our batteries today, even though there's a lot of innovation in them, they're anything but. If you take most of your electronics, the size of those electronics today is limited by the size of the batteries that you have to accommodate in them. And eliminating those batteries actually gives you something that is smaller, lighter, thinner, and so on. And we found actually that by eliminating the battery, you can actually reduce the cost of these sensors as well. Wireless power tends to be, notwithstanding the upfront technology cost, they actually tend to be lower cost overall than having batteries and replacing them and dealing with all of the consequences of those. And if there are no batteries, there are less safety concerns. They don't explode. They're much safer. Okay, so let's get to the next slide. So let's see what's going on in smart retail, right? And you may have already seen, actually, everybody knows, right? Retail is struggling. A lot of it is because of the online shopping. And the retail industry is quite motivated now to see how they can compete with online. And one of the things they want to be able to do is to make a lot of the information that you see on the shelf dynamic, not only the product description, but pricing and everything else, and customize it. And you may have seen already retailers deploying this technology, right? Smart displays, smart price displays, these that you see in the picture here, there are already actually quite a sizable market. From last count that I heard, there are about 200 million of these displays being used by various retailers, including Walmart, Kohl's, Macy's, in China, and so on, right? So these displays are nothing new. These displays are actually being used. And more retailers want to use them. The challenge is these displays, they tend to be actually very thick today. They have they have coin cell batteries, and they have a certain amount of lifetime when they run out, and then you have to have a store associate go around changing batteries. It is a complete nightmare, right? And the industry says, Sanjay, we could be doing an order of magnitude more of these displays if we could eliminate the overhead and cost of these batteries and the frustration that comes along with having to swap these batteries out. Right? So that's really what is motivating retail to say, look, in order to better compete with online, I need wireless power. That is the single biggest challenge I have. If I had that, and by the way, wireless power, they need power, but also an integrated communications mechanism, right? So I can communicate new data. And very interestingly, in China especially, you can use these displays now. They also include NFC technology. You can even pick up an item from the shelf, pay with it using your phone right then and there. And I'm assuming some of you at least heard the concept of the Amazon Go, which is stores where people can just pick up and walk out, right? Very, very limited checkout. The way the checkout counters are in what you see in retail today kind of get eliminated, right? So very, very frictionless shopping environment. But to really make that happen in a way that is scalable, you need wireless power. And this is where the RF technology that AirFuel has standardized is a perfect fit, because we can deliver the amount of power that they need, which is not in watts, right? We're talking about milliwatts, single-digit milliwatts of power to these displays that is sufficient to toggle and change the content on these displays, and also communicate the new data that needs to be changed, whether it's new pricing or a new feature or a coupon or whatever else. So if we go to the next slide, yeah, so some of the requirements what the retail industry has communicated is, hey, look, I need less than 10 meters. Ideally, even 3 meters is sufficient. You can imagine the wireless power transmitters on the ceiling, and they're powering these displays, that are on store shelves, right? So no more than 3 meters or so. One of the key requirements is you have to be able to charge multitude of these displays. So it's not one-to-one requirement. That is not something that is going to be scalable. You really are going to need, one transmitter can charge, tens and maybe even more of these displays. You want to be able to update the content on these displays. It doesn't need to be updated instantly. Even 3 seconds for updating the content of the display is sufficient, right? This is low power is certainly what is the most important objective, rather than communication speed. And you can see these displays, absolutely, the closer they are to the form factor they have today, which is really paper labels stuck on little rails like this, right? That's exactly what you want. And for that, you really need a single ASIC solution, very highly integrated single chip solution where the display drivers, the wireless power, the communication, everything is integrated into a form factor that is exceedingly rugged, right? I always tell people, consumers always abuse your product, and certainly at retail and display, they take a lot of beating, right? So you really need to create a product which is very, very highly integrated, purpose-built for this purpose with wireless power integrated. So let me now talk a little bit about what AirFuel RF can do. And I know this may leave a little bit of you wanting some more. I'm happy to have a much deeper technical discussion. Just reach out to me via Greg, and we can schedule additional time to have a more detailed education session on what AirFuel RF can do. So as I said, right, AirFuel RF is designed for low power applications. We're really talking, even though theoretically we can deliver power a couple of watts, what I would say is you're really talking about half a watt and below over a distance of meters, right? So it's not a lot of power. It's not going to charge your smartphone, but for a lot of IoT devices and so on, and even goes beyond retail. Think of, smart buildings and so on, where you have these temperature sensors, humidity sensors, all of these other sensors that can be there that don't need batteries anymore, and they can be all wirelessly powered, right? The spatial freedom, which is by far the most important, you can get up to a few meters and really truly volumetric charging, right? So it's not creating a surface, but you can charge anything that happens to be in a given volume. And the farther you are from the transmitter, really it's limited by not technology, but by safety regulations that exist today. And the same safety regulation that you use for cell phones and so on. So it's something that is actually very safe, and the products we have all pass the same standards. So there's no specific rules for wireless power other than, in a given piece of spectrum, how much energy can be transmitted safely and can be absorbed by the human body, let's say. Can you just go back? So we can charge multiple devices, and to make all of this happen, we use an out-of-band communication technique, BLE 4.0. There are multiple frequencies that can be used for this purpose. The ISM band in the 900 megahertz is quite an ideal choice, balanced between the amount of power and the range. But the 2.4 gigahertz or the 5 gigahertz band are also viable for the same applications, actually. Very good. Let's see if I have another slide. And by the way, here is, just in case you're wondering where is the progress in the market, AirFuel, both resonant and RF, have products in the market already. Here are some of the products. We talked a little bit about the Dell product that I led the engineering for, which is a Dell laptop with AirFuel Resonant on the market. There are robots on the market with this technology. If you go to the Taipei airport, you will have an opportunity to experience this firsthand. Here you see something that looks like an Apple AirPower device that is actually available today, where you can charge multiple devices, all of your electronics, but it works on the next generation technology. You'll see on the far right a hearing aid with AirFuel RF technology in the market as well. And in between, you see the 5G. I'm going to save this one. This is a very interesting application, how 5G needs wireless power, but I'm going to save it for one of our future discussions. Anyway, I have a feeling I may have gone a little bit beyond the 30 minutes. We'll open the floor, Greg, to any questions. I know there's a lot to discuss today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sanjay. That really was certainly eye-opening for me. And I'll be honest with you, you kind of had me with they don't explode. That's kind of an important feature. I'm glad you highlighted that.
Absolutely.
Would like to kick off a little bit of Q&A here. I know we're a little behind, so we'll probably have to cut Q&A a bit short. But if you would, when you have a question, please very quickly introduce your name so we know who's talking. And then you can ask Sanjay the question. While people are unmuting, I do have one question going back to the magnetic resonance charging. And I really liked that slide you showed where it was a desktop and you had a phone and a laptop and these things. And as that becomes more feasible, how do you see the power getting to the desk? In particular, do you think that that desk would end up being more of a PoE device, or would that need more power, like an AC power circuit to fuel the desk to then charge the devices?
And Sanjay, before you answer, I just want to let everyone know that there's two different ways to answer questions. You can raise your hand, and then I can unmute you at the when the time is right, and then or you can there's a chat box. And just because of the number of people on the call, we're trying to limit the amount of background noise. But yeah, thanks. Go ahead, Sanjay. Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, great question, right? So you can it depends on the amount of power that you need to deliver, right? You can use PoE if you're talking about, let's say tens of watts of power maximum. You can use AC if you want to deliver anything higher. Both solutions are fine. People have also talked about USB-C DC power as well, right? So that's really the standard is flexible enough to allow for all of those innovations. In fact, I've seen a lot of innovation in how you're going to deliver power to a kitchen counter and so on. Mm-hmm. And one of the benefits actually of resonance, which is really interesting, is if you experienced wireless charging, the first generation technology, let's say at Starbucks or at your home, you have to put something on the table or on a surface, or you have to make a hole under the surface, right? Nobody wants to do that. With resonance, you can have something which is completely hidden under, let's say, a desk or a kitchen counter, and it can go through pretty much all the materials that we experience in daily life, whether it's wood, granite, marble, anything you can think of, right? It can penetrate through it. So that's really, the eyesore of cables running around is completely disappears.
Yeah, that's great. And as it pertains to that, what's the energy efficiency of the conversion? If your transmitters are being AC powered, most of these devices are being powered DC. How efficient is that energy conversion?
Actually, this is something that has been a topic of great interest. We're working with Energy Star. But as a rule of thumb, the energy efficiency will improve as the total amount of power delivered increases. Now, even for a smartphone, wireless charging is roughly 80% or so efficient, which is, actually compares quite favorably to even a wire charger. Mm-hmm. But if you're talking about charging, let's say, an electric car, I have seen, and you can probably Google this, these wireless power transmitters, wireless power systems can be as efficient, even more efficient than actually using a cable. Because of that power levels, the energy loss in a cable can be quite high.
That's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Greg, are there any hands up? I can't see that. I can see the chat, but I can't see the hands.
No, there's no hands up just yet.
Oh, Sanjay, I must have asked everyone's questions there.
Sanjay, I have a question. It's Greg. When in terms of like just forecasting, when do you think this technology is going to become mainstream in retail or in intelligent buildings in general, and in different applications and things like that? Like, are there discussions and thought about a timeline?
I always preface this by saying any information I give you is going to be wrong, which is probably right. This is a very difficult challenge when you ask market numbers and time frame. It is always extremely challenging, and I always remind people, and I learned this the hard way. I have had the pleasure or the scars of commercializing a lot of new technology in wireless world, and it always has taken way longer than I thought it would. And I'll give you some example. I did some of the first technical work on Wi-Fi in '93. I deployed the first Wi-Fi access point in 2000, right? So roughly it takes 10 years before the technology is ready to scale. And wireless power, I expect, is going to be no different. However, I'm actually quite optimistic that given the fact that there are first products in the market already, and the use cases for this technology are quite mature, the need is very much there, and the fact that we have the entire ecosystem together, I expect in the next couple of years, you will start to see deployments of the technology in place. We are past the point where people say, is this technology for real, right? That is what really the first products do in the market, is everybody can see and touch and feel and experience. And we've gone through the first cycles of all of the regulatory approval cycles, right? The challenge of getting FCC and telling the government that this is safe and we don't need new rules and so on. We've gone through that hurdles already, at least some of the products already have, which makes it easy to now take those learnings for the larger market. So I'm quite optimistic that in the next couple of years, you will see both AirFuel resonant and RF in a lot more devices close to you.
Sanjay, it's Ron Zimmer, president of CABA, and I'm really impressed by the presentation. So happy you were able to share that with our organization through the Intelligent Building Council. One of the things that we'll be talking about later in the meeting is, and not everyone's aware, that our two associations have been working together for a number of years, which is something that I think we originally bumped into one of your team, one of your organization members a few years ago at CES,
right? Which
kind of launched our discussion and then collaboration. But one of the collaborative thoughts, and we're going to be talking about white papers, and you gave it just a superb example of how retail. Of course, intelligent buildings cover so many different aspects, not just the typical commercial office building, but as you say, retail, shopping malls, airports, sports stadiums, and many, many more. There's and all have, I believe, some real applications for what this technology can bring. Would it be, maybe this is something that we can take offline, but you can give some consideration. First of all, you may have white papers already done that we'd be delighted to share with our members and even people on this call. And secondly, we have a process where we can collaborate on a white paper, CABA and your organization, to create one that would maybe look at even other segments of the intelligent building sector. And that, of course, we widely share that with the industry. So give that some thought.
Absolutely. And actually, so that's a great point, and I should have emphasized that. And our collaboration and cooperation between CABA and AirFuel Alliance. And by the way, Greg and the AirFuel marketing team have been collaborating, and I think they already have, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 white paper topics already formed up that the teams are going to start collaborating in terms of authoring the content and so on.
Yeah, there's a couple of like sort of preliminary proposals that are out there that haven't been officially sort of launched and accepted yet, but they're coming on their way.
Well, maybe we could fast track that now with this discussion.
Well, absolutely.
Who should we work with, Sanjay?
Ron, this is Ken Wacks. I would point out that if the Alliance has papers prepared, we can take the CABA Information Council route and have the Alliance submit the white papers for review.
Oh, absolutely. The ones that are currently there, we try to limit it to 1 year in aging, but
Okay.
The other part is who should we work with within yourself, maybe, to really, even if we just pick one good one, where we can collaborate on a new white paper.
Yeah, so I think actually Greg is already connected to Trish Thomas, who leads marketing at AirFuel. So even though I would love to get personally involved, and I do, I just want to make sure that that I'm not undermining my marketing team. So Greg, if you continue to work with Trish, I'm sure she will be able to round up all of the right marketing folks and our members. And she has already shared with me some of the topics that are at least up for discussion. And I'm expecting we get started on them, in this quarter already.
Excellent. Well, that's some really good dialogue that we had there, some great questions. Sanjay, thank you so much again for spending some time with us today and really educating us on the potential for wireless charging, wireless power. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Trevor for the research update.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. Thank you very much, Bob. Item number 5 on the agenda is the research update. One item to report on, and that is the 2019 IBC Landmark research project, which is really focusing on the building retrofits that increase the organizational productivity of the workers in the space. Key word in that title is, and so the idea here is we will build on existing projects that have already been done, and quite apropos of the earlier conversation, the first bit of work on organizational productivity was a white paper that was delivered in 2014 by NRC that focused on improving organizational productivity with automation systems. And later that was followed up with a project that was delivered in 2017 that was a multi-client boutique research project looking at more detailed information on how investments in better building technologies developed improved organizational productivity metrics. And that work was sponsored by 6 CABA members, Philips, UT, United Technologies Research Center, Intel, Schneider, and Distech, and Pella. And basically that project identified the positive effects of these investments on metrics including absenteeism, employee turnover, self-assessed performance, job satisfaction, health, and well-being. And we've had presentations both at the IBC and also at the CABA Fora, where we had and heard the value of the staff is much, much greater than the cost of our energy spend and our O&M spend. Perhaps as much as a tenfold difference in O&M and maybe even 100-fold in terms of energy. So the idea here is that if you're going to make energy investments in your building, you want to be able to lever those to realize organizational productivity gains, which have the potential to swamp the energy cost savings in terms of value. So that's a bit of a background. So where are we going to go with this phase 2 project? The phase 2 project really is going to take from our collaborators, our consortium members, And so they will provide data that relate to their buildings, including we're really looking for HR data, human resources data, so that we can go after turnover rates, sick days, and other elements or metrics of productivity. And we can then do a comparison between either before and after the building rehabilitation or retrofit, or we can do sort of a longitudinal study between buildings that are nominally identical, except for maybe a group of different technologies in one that's not present in another. With the idea that we can then begin to identify what those KPIs are, how the technologies affect the KPIs, and begin to build out what would essentially be a monetization framework that would be specific for a particular vertical. And then you can imagine that if you have company-specific multipliers, you can begin to build the business case. So that's a long-winded update on that. Suffice to say that Acuity Brands, CyberPower, Siemens, and NYSERDA and the NRC have committed to this initiative. And we're looking for members to contribute data. And specifically, if your organization has data, then we'd like to hear from you. Certainly, Greg would love to hear from you, as would I. And then we would talk to you about the suitability of the data to be included in the study in an anonymous way, and that there would be an in-kind credit associated with the data that you provide. As with typical landmark research projects, there are three levels: bronze, silver, and a gold, $5, $10, and $15,000 respectively. And there's different benefits at each one of those levels. And then at the top tier, we would work with you to see how we can lever the data that you provide and determine what company-specific outcomes we can identify from those data. So I think it's a really great opportunity to help build the business case for greater investment in our buildings through technology and realizing productivity gains, which essentially is a triple bottom line win. So for the planet, for the employees, for the employer, and I think that's something that we can all get behind. So love to hear from you. Please reach out to Greg. Is there anything I've missed on that one, Greg?
No, I just like to encourage everyone to go to download the first version of the paper at caba.org/productivity and see that the first version of the first phase of this particular research project. And if you're interested, please reach out to myself or anyone at CABA about potentially funding the research project, or if you do have a data that or a subset of buildings that you want to get included in the research. We can have a discussion about that to make sure if it's a suitable quality and quantity, and then have a follow-up discussions with the NRC to get that incorporated. But definitely reach out to anyone at CABA if you're interested in joining this particular research project. And I know we met at CES, and this was definitely selected as the number one initiative to going forward in terms of research, and it was a unanimous decision to make this organizational productivity phase 2 of the project go forward for 2019 and to be completed at the end of 2020.
Thank you very much, Greg. And I feel passionately about this. If we can begin to do the monetization well and be rooted in science, then fundamentally I think we can change the business case for investing in technology in our buildings. And it's much more than a simple energy play. It's really a play around creating an environment which is good for the employees so that everybody wins. So that brings us to the next item, which is the white paper subcommittee update. And it's my pleasure to introduce Ken Wacks.
Oh, thank you very much. Let me bring you all up to date on where we stand now. In Intelligent Buildings Council and the Connected Home Council have a committee working on white papers. These are original papers developed voluntarily by a subcommittee of the IBC or the CHC. Let me bring you up to date now on what we've been doing in intelligent buildings. We completed a project on the impact of automated shadings in building projects. You can see here the many participants. The chair is Justin Francilla of Somfy. The work has now been completed. It was completed last month. Based on this work, there was a keynote presentation given at the last IBC meeting. So some of you have heard the background of this paper. We did publish an abstract of this paper in the iHomes and Buildings magazine, the quarterly publication of CABA. And the entire white paper will be available shortly. We've got a little glitch because Ralston King, who's been with CABA as long as I can remember, in charge of CABA publications, left CABA because he got elected to a political position in the city of Ottawa. I believe it's on the city council, and evidently that's a full-time job. So onward and upward for Ralston, but we sorely miss him. Next paper, energy metering and power quality metering in North America, was a white paper proposed and led by Ryan Fettgatter, who's with Easy Meter and NEMA. There have been some working group meetings, and two organizations, the ARC Group and Frost & Sullivan, have started working with Ryan to get his ideas, because his company has been one of the developers of energy meters for specialty applications. So I'm sure he has a lot to contribute there. I understand that with the help of ARC and Frost & Sullivan, we expect to complete this paper hopefully by the end of this month. The third paper is actually jointly being done with IBC and the Connected Home Council. This is IoT cybersecurity guidelines, standards, and verification systems. The concept for this paper originated with Tim Mosley at BC Hydro, and the paper is nearly in final form. In fact, I'm involved as one of the reviewers, and I expect to be speaking with the folks at BC Hydro maybe later today. So we hope to have the paper done soon. We're targeting this week or next week. All the CABA papers are available, as you can see at the bottom of the slide, or the previous, there it is, that both slides have it, caba.org/white papers. These are publicly available white papers. They give us an opportunity to spread our knowledge among CABA members and to the greater community and homes and buildings. So thank you all to the contributors. And as I alluded to earlier when we had the presentation on remote powering, there are two ways for CABA members to become educated through the organization. One is by contributing to the white papers that we reviewed. The other is to find white papers published elsewhere that are deemed relevant. And I know we're going to hear that as a featured CABA benefit from Andrew. So let me segue to Andrew, and I'll stay on the line and back him up, because I chair the CABA Information Council and can speak to the good work that the volunteers at the council have been doing, literally finding hundreds of papers that can essentially be like a clipping service for CABA members, so they don't have to read as many journals, and you can come to essentially a curated library that CABA has. So, Andrew, would you like to add something there?
And I
Yeah.
should point out before you
Sure.
start, Andrew, is that we were expecting we have a preliminary proposal that's not approved that we received a couple days ago from the AirFuel Alliance on wireless power transfer and commercial applications that Ron and Sanjay were discussing earlier. So that'll be coming down the pipeline to you, Ken, and to the subcommittee to do the formal approval of that particular proposal. So that's another one that's in the pipe coming down.
So this would be a new IBC white paper.
Yes, yeah. It's not the proposal is not approved just yet. We just received it, but it'll be coming down shortly.
Good. I look forward to it, Greg. Thank you.
Yeah, Andrew, go ahead.
Thanks, Greg and Ken. So yes, it's Andrew Glennie here, Member Services Coordinator with CABA, and I've spoken to many of you before in the past, but I'm just here to speak about the white papers or to amplify on what Ken and Greg have said. If the white paper program is, of course, a featured benefit of CABA membership, and we would be very interested, just to explain, as the white papers are summaries of existing research on a particular topic. If anyone on the call today or in the CABA community would like to suggest a new white paper, or join a white paper that is in progress right now that we're working on, you can visit the CABA.org the webpage and look under white papers under the research drop-down menu and see the various papers that are in progress right now, as well as those that have been recently published on the New Deal for buildings and so on. We'd be very happy to receive a submission for the white paper subcommittee to review that, and we're actually very interested at this time to receive one on the connected home as well, as the intelligent building is we wanted to mount one on the connected home. So please, if anyone is on the call right now, you can reach out to me as the Member Services Coordinator, or to Greg Walker, the Research Director, and we'd be happy to receive your proposal for a white paper or to join. In fact, one in progress, as I said. So thanks very much. And Ken, did you have anything to add to that?
We encourage CABA members to review 5 white papers a year. Mm-hmm. And as an incentive, we pay for the reviews at a token amount of $25 per review. So you can get educated and get paid to be educated. Think of that instead of paying tuition.
Now, I just myself, maybe the connected, the CABA Information Council, how may CABA members join up with the council to Ken? Just
well, simply contact CABA administration, Greg or Ron, and you'll be added. It's as simple as that. And one of the staff people at CABA maintains a list of papers available, and you will be sent the list. You can choose your papers. They'll be forwarded to you. And we have a fill-in form that's quite straightforward. We ask for the particulars about the paper. We ask for a few sentence summary of the paper as an abstract. We ask you to check off keywords that represent the contents of the paper, and most importantly, is the paper relevant and accepted? The criteria for accepting papers are: number 1, it be relevant either to the home or the building or both sides of CABA, and number 2, that it provides some useful information without being overly commercial. So, as I've explained previously, you can mention product names in a sort of a context which says, here's a problem, here are many ways to solve the problem, here's a preferred way, and by the way, my company has a solution. That's acceptable. If you say, here's a problem, and the only solution is my company's solution, that's not acceptable.
Right, thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, and Ken, it's Ron. I thank you so much, both Andrew and Ken and Greg, for explaining those two important benefits. One that we might have missed, or maybe I missed it, on the white papers, just to be clear, only CABA members can bring forward white papers for consideration, and there are committees, as mentioned, subcommittees that review that and approve that to move it to the working group stage. However, once it is approved, at the working group stage, anyone can join. Non-members, we want the best subject matter experts that we can find to be involved in the working groups, and they might be from universities or national labs or industry, retired people and they may have no desire to join CABA, but they have a lot of expertise to add too. So just on that note, we encourage even non-members to look at the working groups. And if there's a white paper that you would love to join, please just get in touch with Andrew or Greg or myself, and we'll be pleased to add you.
Thanks, Ron.
So that's for Ron. That's for ideas for white papers to be written by CABA. And I would also encourage people, as they peruse the literature and they find an article that's particularly relevant to CABA, please submit it along with a review, and it will benefit all CABA members, and you'll get your token $25 for your troubles.
Thank you, Ken, Andrew, and Ron. I'll just go through the Keynote Selection Task Force section. We are looking for volunteers to help select upcoming keynote topic or speakers, please. I would like to explain the process. It's just a simple 5-step process. The suggestions for topics from IBC members at this meeting gets forwarded to the task force, who also suggest topics and speakers and also prioritize. Greg will send an email to the IBC executive shortly after the meeting with keynote topics based on the roster prepared by the task force, which includes IBC members' suggestion as well as the list of anyone who come forward asking to present. Based on this information, the IBC executives will make the selection of the topic, and after the topic is selected and approved by the IBC executive, Greg will reach out to the speaker. So we are happy to get any feedback or suggestion on this process. I'll pause for a few seconds to see if anybody has any suggestion to improve this process, or has any anything to bring up on this process.
And you could always raise your hand or type your name and everything in the chat box if you're interested in being involved in this task force. It's really just to make a formalized process to help select the next keynote speaker, and going forward keynote speakers, to try to make it a little bit more smoother process. And also, if you have any suggestions for next keynote topics, definitely reach out to myself, or put it in the chat box, or raise your hand, and we can see about reaching out to individuals, looking at even just topics, and getting some direction, and then going forward there with next keynote presentations for the meeting in a couple months.
Thanks, Greg. We'll move on to the next section, which is
if you think of anything after the call, you definitely email me at walker@caba.org, and with your potential topics for next keynotes, or if you want to volunteer to be on this selection, the small selection task force for the keynote topics. Thanks.
With this, I will open up with the council and all the members for any new business or any new topics.
It's Ron here. I just wanted to maybe come back and just to clarify, will you be chairing the task force, which I hope you will, but maybe you've worked that out with Greg already.
Yeah, I think, Ron, I think it was, I think all the vice chairs is going to also be part of the volunteering process to select the upcoming
Excellent.
topics. Yeah.
And would you chair it though? Would you be the chair of the task force?
That's something which we need to discuss. At this moment, I think we are actually deciding on that. I think that is something which has not been decided.
Okay.
But I'll be happy to chair that. Yeah.
I hate to put anyone on the spot, but I do that from time to time.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'd love to have you as the chair.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Accepted.
And there you go. It's the chairman of the board member.
Well, Ron, thank you for putting the train on the tracks.
Yep. No problem. I do that from time to time.
Okay. Well, I guess. Ron, do you want to move on to the announcements?
Sure.
The eighth item on the agenda.
Yeah, it'll be really quick. Just to again alert the members and some of the people have been on the council for a long time, understand and know that CABA gets involved with, as part of our mandate from our board of directors, we have an outreach program, CABA outreach program, where we make a concerted effort to attend. First of all, we support over 100, endorse 100 events around the world. And we attend, last year, I think, between the Ambassadors and Speakers Bureau that CABA has. If you're not engaged in that, please take a look at, we have over 50 of our CABA members in there. And then staff and others who have been very diligent. David Katz, I know, has done many for CABA as an example of one of our more active ambassador speakers. But so we just want to make you aware that there are many great events that we've been involved with presentations, as well as panels, as well as exhibits, etc. So these are just some of the more recent ones that are more focused on the intelligent building. We also get involved in, obviously, connected home type events like CS and CEDIA. There's some coming up, of course, and these we want to just make you aware of in case you're not aware. These are some key events that we support. And Greg, I think you can move the slide if you want. And then we try to alert our industry to those events. These are key industry events that we are endorsing, supporting. And again, they're all placed in the CABA website, endorsed event section. Sometimes we have free passes. We have discounts for members. We'll alert you if there's a presentation that CABA is doing on a specific topic. So that's something you may want to reference to the website as well. We put up now over 1,000 other events that in our upcoming events section that you can access and look at. So if you're saying, I wonder what's happening in the month of September of this year that maybe would be of interest to us, or looking for new events, that's a great location to go to. We have the most comprehensive listing in the world in this space of connected homes and intelligent buildings. The one event that I will just mention with some bias is the CABA Smart Building Summit, scheduled for September 15th to 17th. It's a new event. In our 30th anniversary year, the board of directors looked at a proposal that was put forward by a team called Agora out of Atlanta, who do summits. They do a smart utility summit for many years. Many of our members, like Siemens, Honeywell, Intel, Panasonic, Eaton's, and others have attended regularly. and are very active in that. And so they came to CABA with a proposal to undertake a smart building summit in the same manner, very professional, 2.5 days, where we actually fly in. CABA will fly in free, complimentary, some key end users, builders, developers, facility managers, architects, engineers, and master integrators. So if you fall in that category and you're on the line and you haven't looked at this, take a look at the website. There's frequently asked questions. There's a recorded webinar that discusses how you can get engaged, and if it's of interest, either as a VIP hosted guest or as a vendor, to be in front of that, because only 40 to 45 vendors are invited, and we probably have close to 20 now that have confirmed or are in the process of confirming their participation. So we are quite excited about this. Our board is expected to have their meeting alongside this event, and it's new for us, and we hope it's not a great success, but one that will be repeated regularly for our industry. It also fills our mandate of trying to educate and inform the people in the like builders, developers, and facility managers, so they have a better understanding of the new technology that's there and how they might be able to better utilize that in their properties and their buildings. So I'll stop there and just answer any questions on these events before we go to the next agenda item. No questions. I think I explained it so well that I will turn it, and also the time's running, so I will turn it back to our chair. And incidentally, we really are appreciative in our 30th anniversary year. A lot of people don't know that NRC the National Research Council, was very, very instrumental in calling together those first meetings, and people and companies and organizations like the Bob Lanes and others from Honeywell and Hydro, well, that time Ontario Hydro, Bell Canada, and others, to really talk about the formation of an industry group, which then became CABA, in 1988. So I really want to again thank and point that out to Trevor, who is now the key representative on our board of directors for NRC. So I want to publicly thank Trevor for your great work on the board on behalf of NRC. We work with so many others, Jennifer and Guy and many, many, many others. But we thank you sincerely for your continued support and for that vision 30 years ago to bring forward a group of companies, which now was a handful of companies at that time. Now we're close to 400 member companies, which is a record. And we work with over 27,000 industry professionals around the world. So you were prescient as NRC and what you saw could be, and we are continuing to grow as the industry grows. So back to you, Trevor.
Oh, thank you very much, Ron. I feel rather humbled with that. Obviously, it's my predecessors that had the vision, and I just get their legacy, which I like. So the next meeting of the IBC, we'd like to hold it on the 8th of August. So please mark your calendars for that. And the meeting invitation will be sent out by Greg shortly. And just before we sign off, I would like to come back and ask the membership and maybe pass the word around to those that may not have been on this webinar today, that we really do want to hear from you. What do you want to learn about? What do you want to hear about? Are there certain people that you've heard at a conference that were really quite moving, motivating, inspirational, and that you'd like to hear more about their work or their initiatives the CABA IBC meeting? And it would be our pleasure then to reach out to them and entice them to come and talk with us. So this is an opportunity for you to shape these meetings and what you learn from the industry professionals. So I would encourage you to make suggestions to Greg, who will then give them to Harsha, who will work with the committee. And if you want to be on that committee, then I would most definitely encourage you to reach out to Greg and Harsha to get signed up, because this is your meeting. So with that, I dare say we're going to call it a wrap. A couple minutes before the allotted time, and I would like to thank all the co-chairs today, and I'd like to thank Ron, Greg, and Andrew, and Ken for their support in this meeting today, and we look forward to chatting with you on the 8th of August. With that, we are adjourned.
Thanks.